little box. Balancing optimism and realism, intuition and planning, faith and fact can be very difficult, but that's what it takes to be effective as a navigating leader. A lesson in navigation. I remember the first time I really understood the importance of the law of navigation. I was 28 years old, and I was leading the second church in my pastoral career. Before my arrival there in 1972, the church had experienced a decade-long plateau in its growth. But by 1975, our attendance had gone from 400 to more than 1,000. I knew we could keep growing and helping more people, but only if we built a new auditorium. The good news was that I already had some experience leading a construction project because I had taken my first church through the process. The bad news was that the first one was really small in comparison to the second one. This was going to be a multi-million-dollar project, more than 20 times larger than my first one. But even that was not the greatest obstacle. Right before I came on board as the leader of the church, there had been a huge battle over another building proposal, and the debate had been vocal, divisive, and bitter. For that reason, I knew that I would experience genuine opposition to my leadership for the first time. There were rough waters ahead, and if I, as the leader, didn't navigate us well, I could sink the ship. In a little box. If the leader can't navigate the people through rough waters, he's liable to sink the ship. Charting the course with a navigation strategy. I should probably confess at this point that I'm not a strong navigator. I don't enjoy in getting into details, and I tend to go with my gut instinct, sometimes a little too quickly for my own good. In the last 15 or 20 years, I've often staffed my weakness and hired good navigating leaders to help my organizations. For example, for many years when I was a church leader, Dan Rayland was on my staff as executive pastor. He is an excellent navigator, currently at Equip, the nonprofit organization I founded in 1996. John Hull works as its president, and he is a fantastic navigating leader. However, back in 1975, I had to take responsibility for the navigation process myself. To help me do that, I developed a strategy that I have used repeatedly in my leadership. I wrote it as an acrostic so that I would always be able to remember it. P. Predetermine a course of action. L. Lay out your goals. A. Adjust your priorities. N. Notify key personnel. A. Allow time for acceptance. H. Head into action. E. Expect problems. A. Always point to the successes. D. Daily review your plan. Plan ahead. That became my blueprint as I prepared to navigate this change for my organization. I had a strong sense of what our course of action needed to be if we were going to keep growing. We need to build a new auditorium. I had looked at every possible alternative, and I knew that was the only viable solution. My goal was to design and build the facility, pay for it in 10 years, and unify all the people in the process. No small feat. Any plan I introduced would have to be voted on in a congregational meeting, so I scheduled one a couple of months ahead to give me time to get everything ready. The next thing I did was direct the next thing I did was direct our board members and a group of key financial leaders to conduct a 20-year analysis of our growth and financial patterns. It covered the previous 10 years and projections for the next 10 years. Based on that, we determined the requirement of the facility. We then formulated a 10-year budget that carefully explained how we would handle financing. I also asked that all of the information we were gathering be put into a 20-page report to be given to the members of the congregation. I knew that major barriers to successful planning are fear of change, ignorance, uncertainty about the future, and lack of imagination. I was going to do everything I could to prevent those factors from hindering us. My next step was to notify the key leaders. I started with the ones who had the most influence, meeting with them individually and sometimes in small groups. Over the course of several weeks, I met with about 100 leaders. I cast a vision for what we needed to do and fielded their questions. And anytime I could sense that a person was hesitant about the project, I planned to meet individually with him again. Then, I allowed time for those key leaders to influence the rest of the people and help them accept the coming changes. In the little box it says, major barriers to successful planning are fear of change, ignorance, uncertainty about the future, and lack of imagination. When the time arrived for the congregational meeting, we were ready to head into action. I took 2 hours to present the project to the people. I handed out my 20-page report with the floor plans, financial analysis, and budgets. I tried to answer every question the people would have before they even had a chance to ask it. I also asked some of the most influential people in the congregation to speak. I expected opposition, but when I opened the floor for questions, I was shocked. There were only 2 questions. One person wanted to know about the placement of the building's water fountains, and the other asked about the number of restrooms. That was when I knew we had navigated the tricky waters successfully. When it was time for the motion asking everyone to vote, the church's most influential layperson made it, and I had already asked the leader who had previously opposed the building project to be the one to second the motion. When the final count was tallied, 98% of the people had voted in favor. Once we navigated through the tricky part of the process, the rest of the project was pretty straightforward. I continually kept the vision in front of the people by giving them good news reports. I made sure we celebrated success, and I periodically reviewed our plans and the result to make sure we were on track. The course had been charted. All we had to do was steer the ship. That was a wonderful learning experience for me. Above everything else, I found out that the secret of the law of navigation in preparation is preparation. When you prepare well, you convey confidence and trust to people. Lack of preparation has the opposite effect. In the end, it's not the size of the project that determines its acceptance, support, and success. It's the size of the leader. That's why I say that anyone can steer the ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. Leaders who are good navigators are capable of taking their people just about anywhere. Little box. In the end, it's not the size of the project that determines its acceptance, support, and success. It's the size of the leader. Applying law of navigation to your life. Number 1. Do you make it a regular practice to reflect on your positive and negative experiences? If not, you will miss the potential lessons they have to offer. Do one of 2 things. Set aside a time to reflect every week, examining your calendar or journal to jog your memory, or build reflection time into your schedule immediately after every major success or failure. In either case, write down what you learned during the discovery process. Number 2, navigating leaders to their homework. Navigating leaders do their homework. Some project or major task that you are currently responsible for. Draw on your past experience, hold intentional conversations with experts and team members to gather information, and examine current conditions that could impact the success of your endeavors. Only after taking these steps should you create your action plan. Number 3, which way do you naturally lean? Toward facts or faith? Rarely is a leader especially talented in both areas. I'm a faith person. I am highly visionary and believe that anything is possible. I often rely on my brother, Larry, to help me with realistic thinking. Yet good navigators must be able to do both. To successfully practice the law of navigation, you must know your own bent. If you are not sure, ask trusted friends and colleagues. Then make sure you have someone with the opposite bent on your team so that you can work together.